to Dragon during flight. The spacecraft is also equipped with 16 Draco thrusters, which are used to orient the spacecraft during the mission. Each Draco thruster is capable of generating around 90 pounds of force in the vacuum of space, and these engines are just as important to Dragon as the Merlin engines are to Falcon 9. In addition to these 16 Draco thrusters, there are 8 Super Dracos, and these power the spacecraft's launch escape system. In the very unlikely event of an emergency, the Super Draco engines can power Dragon half a mile away from the launch vehicle in less than 8 seconds. And just like the Falcon 9 first stage, Dragon is also reusable. In fact, the Polaris Dawn crew is flying today in the exact same spacecraft for NASA's Crew 1 mission, as well as Inspiration 4. That said, there are a few changes that we've made to Dragon for this mission. In order to accommodate a spacewalk, this is the first Dragon to be outfitted with a Skywalker in place of the cupola observation dome. The Skywalker is a structure that is mounted to the top of Dragon, as you can see there, and the astronauts will use this to assist in exiting and re-entering the spacecraft during their spacewalk. This Dragon is also carrying Starlink, making this the first mission to attempt to use the Starlink network in orbit. Inside of Dragon is a router connected to a user terminal located in Dragon's trunk, and this terminal will be linked to a new device known as the Plug and Placer, which will enable the spacecraft to communicate with Starlink satellites that will be in orbit below Dragon. Now, we're very excited to see all of this in action, but Dragon has to get up there first. So let's take a look at the rocket that will be taking our crew and Dragon to space. Dragon will be delivered to orbit today by SpaceX's Falcon 9, the first orbital class rocket capable of reflight. Reusability allows us to refly the most expensive parts of the rocket, and that in turn drives down the cost of spaceflight. To date, Falcon 9 has performed 369 orbital launches, 326 landings, and 300 reflights. Standing about 65.5 meters tall, or about 215 feet, Falcon 9 is a 2-stage rocket that provides 1.7 million pounds of thrust on its first stage, thanks to those 9 Merlin M1D engines. And today's mission will be the 4th launch and landing for this particular booster. It previously supported NASA's Crew 8 mission to the International Space Station in March earlier this year. It's also supported 2 SpaceX Starlink missions. Now, after stage separation, when the first stage has done the bulk of its job for the day, it will initiate 2 burns as it makes its way back down towards the surface of Earth. First is the entry burn to help slow Falcon 9 down as it prepares to re-enter the thicker layers of Earth's atmosphere. Finally, the landing burn will further decelerate the rocket just enough to perform a precision landing on our drone ship. Just read the instructions. And that drone ship is currently stationed downrange in the Atlantic Ocean. The Falcon 9 first stage is equipped with 4 landing legs, and these are made of state-of-the-art carbon fiber with an aluminum honeycomb. These are placed symmetrically around the base of the rocket, and they are stowed during ascent and deploy just ahead of landing. Now, moving up the rocket, a Falcon 9's second stage engine ignites a few seconds after stage separation, and this engine can be restarted multiple times to place multiple payloads into different orbits. The second stage is powered by one single Merlin vacuum, or MVAC engine, and this engine is capable of more than 220,000 pounds of thrust. The MVAC features a significantly larger expansion nozzle to maximize the engine's efficiency in the vacuum of space, and at full power, the Merlin vacuum engine operates with the greatest efficiency ever for an American-made hydrocarbon rocket engine. And of course, let's not forget about the unsung inner stage, a composite structure that connects the first and second stages. It also houses the pneumatic pushers that allow the first and second stages to separate during flight. Inside of the inner stage, or rather outside of the inner stage, is where you'll find Falcon 9's 4 hypersonic grid fins, and these are at the base of the inner stage. They help orient the rocket during re-entry. Here in Hawthorne, you can actually have lunch in the cafe while watching the inner stages being made just across the aisle. Looks like we're just at about T-minus 2 hours or so. So while we continue to count down, how are things going, John?
Well, Atticus, things are about where we left it before. Inside T-minus 2 hours, you can see with the live shot there of the pad deck, looking at the 2 elevators we used a few hours ago to bring the crew up and the view up on top of the fixed service structure. We do have that light rain shower that we're talking about. Actually, right now, we would be at about T-minus 3 minutes, and the weather would be red. So the good news is when we made the decision to pause the countdown and go to the second T0, we avoided what would have been a scrub right now. Because as you may recall, once we begin loading propellant onto the Falcon 9 at T-minus 35 minutes, you're committed then. You've got to get down to zero and launch, or you're scrubbed for the day. Now, we did not start propellant loading at T-minus 35 minutes. A little bit of a status refresh. We got down to T-minus 44 minutes and 30 seconds approximately, and we called a pause or a hold in the countdown. We had just finished the electronic poll verifying that the Falcon team was go to load propellant into the Falcon 9, but we did not actually get that far. All evening or early morning, as the case may be, at Kennedy Space Center, we've been watching the weather. The launch weather officer had advised the team that a frontal boundary had come ashore in Florida. That was creating scattered cells that would pop up and occasionally violate the cumulus cloud rule, or in this case, as we just saw with the pad deck view there, or up on top of the fixed service structure, we were getting rain showers with rain higher up in the atmosphere than we would be allowed to fly through. So we continued to count down, fingers crossed, heading for that first T0, which was planned for 7:38 Universal Time. Inside T-minus 1 hour, it was still very uncertain whether or not the weather would cooperate for that first T0. The team took the decision down as far as they could inside of T-minus 50 minutes, trying to get the last little bit of information. But just as we thought we were going to press on and go with the original T0, we saw a cell pop up on the radar map that exceeded conditions. We looked at that and decided to go ahead and hold the clock. We heard the Corps then go back up, talk to the crew, tell them that we were held, and then we recycled to the second T0. Now we have 3 T0 opportunities. The first one is now passing us by as we get ready at 7 hours and 38 minutes Universal Time, 10 minutes from now, and that would have been a scrub. The next one that we are aiming for is coming up at 9 hours, 23 minutes, 49 seconds Universal Time, just under the 2 hours you see there on the countdown clock. There is a third opportunity if we need it at 11 hours, 15 minutes Universal Time. The problem we have is the weather is still uncertain enough that the team can't make a decision whether the second T0 or the third T0 is the best one. We're going to continue counting down, obviously, as you can see on the clock there. The scattered rain showers we see, those should clear out of the way. But we most recently had another no-go condition pop up. The surface electric field, essentially the measure of how the atmosphere is electrically charged, has violated criteria. We're going to continue to watch that. We think that one will clear. Primarily, we're continuing to worry about the cumulus clouds and the possibility of having to fly through rain on the way up the northeast coast of the United States as we head into the orbit at just over 51 degrees inclination. The Corps has talked to the crew on board Dragon. The mission director for Dragon, they have done their readiness polls. We've also checked with the SpaceX Falcon 9 team. They are go. Also, it appears that the next T0, there is no proximity warnings or concerns with any orbital satellites. Sometimes you have to move a launch window a minute or two if there might be a conjunction in space. Right now, it looks like we don't have any of those issues. The big question will be whether or not the weather is going to be go at the next T0. The other plan that we have is while we are in this hold for a little while, this is giving the Dragon and Falcon launch teams a chance to rotate people on and off console, take a few minutes break. It's been a long early morning for the team. Everybody continues to have support. So, we're ready to support anything that may come up, but we are giving the crew a chance to refresh. The next major event is we continue asking the launch weather officer, what's the forecast look like? What's the forecast look like? The next big one coming up will be at T-minus 1 hour and 30 minutes, just over 22 minutes from now. That's when Dragon is going to rotate the seats back into the launch position. The crew right now is sitting upright inside the Dragon that you can see there. The crew access arm, and there's a view of the crew in their upright posture, and then we'll rotate to horizontal into the launch position to get ready. That'll be a little later in the count than we had done it the first time around, but that's fine. The hatch is closed, leak checks, everything is copacetic in Dragon, so they'll get ready in an hour and a half and go back into the launch position in their seats. We'll continue to bring it down. We'll get inside T-minus 1 hour where we'll do another evaluation on what the launch looks like. And then fingers crossed we'll be able to press past T-minus 45 minutes and get into the prop load at T-minus 35 minutes. Everything continues to look good. One reminder, the only people on the pad right now are the Dragon crew themselves, the 4 people inside the Dragon. You can see that crew access arm. The seals have been deflated. They're retracted. All of the handholds are out of the way. Everything's been cleared. The only thing really waiting for everybody is ideally we get inside 45 minutes so we can retract the arm. So nobody's going back out to the pad right now. All the vehicles are cleared off. So we're going to just continue to give you status updates as we go along. But Kate, yeah, hopefully the second T0 is the winner. The first one turns out the weather is red right now, and we wouldn't have been able to go.
Yep. Well, you know what? It's been a good rehearsal so far. And realistically speaking, while the Polaris Dawn crew, I'm sure, would be delighted to be closer to, wait, how long have we been holding now? Would they be in space now? I'm not sure. My brain is a little mushy at this point. But the point is that they would still be in the Dragon capsule right now, regardless, in their seats, most likely. So they're not really doing anything significantly different physically anyway. Now, we did, as you heard John say, we did rotate the seats a bit so that they could kind of like stretch out a little bit more to be a little bit more comfortable. So, yeah, I'm guessing there's probably some like charades happening or other games involving like hand signs and yeah, so
whatever they can do while still strapped into their seats.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah,
oh, look, there they are.
There you can see them on their tablets.
All 4 of them on their
them.
tablets. I wonder if we've equipped those tablets with any games. I hope so.
I mean, they'd have a lot more mobility in these EVA suits to be able to play some more games in these suits versus the IVA suits. So.
Yeah, that is definitely true. Gorgeous shot there of 39A. Like we mentioned before, we are in a not quite a holding pattern because we're still progressing with the launch countdown, but we did have to reset the T0 clock due to weather, and we are fingers crossed that our second targeted T0 time will be more fruitful than the first one.
Yeah, we are patiently waiting. It is T-minus 1 hour and 49 minutes until our new T0. But yeah, the crew is patiently waiting, relaxing inside of Dragon. And so now during the EVA for the Polaris Dawn crew, they will be wearing our newly designed EVA spacesuits, which we see them wearing in the Dragon capsule. And there you can see the suit on your screen. Building a base on the moon and a city on Mars will require thousands of suits. So the development of this suit and the EVA that's going to be performed on this mission are important steps to a scalable design for spacesuits on future long-duration missions. So let's take a look at the making of the suits our crew will be wearing during the first ever commercial spacewalk.
An EVA suit is an extravehicular activity suit, which is a spacesuit that can go outside of the spacecraft to do a spacewalk. We started with with the IVA suit that we have, the intravehicular activity suit, as a kind of starting point and looked at it and said, what would we have to change about this to be able to support a spacewalk? So the first is mobility. The crew will have to do a lot of moving around inside of Dragon to get outside and do the spacewalk. We had to add in new joints and new features in the suit to allow them enhanced mobility while the suit's pressurized.
When a crew member is pressurized in the suit, the soft portions of the suit become rigid. They need actual flexure and rotational joints to allow them to move around. It's kind of like a suit of armor made of fabric. We innovated in flexure joints to allow easy bending at the elbows and the knees, as well as a collapsible rotator joint that exists on the shoulder, which allows the suit to remain nearly fully soft, but when pressurized is a rotational bearing.
The difference between the IVA and the EVA suit is that on the IVA suit, the zipper system location is in the inseam. But since we needed to have lots of mobility on our EVA suit, that was not the preferred choice. By moving the zipper system from the inseam to the waist, we mitigated the risk of the stress of the zipper.
And another big element was also the thermal side of things. The crew is obviously exposed to a much more extreme thermal environment during the EVA. So we want to make sure that the inside of the suit is comfortable for them and that as they interface with parts of the vehicle, that is safe for them to touch as well.
The EVA suit is built and designed here at SpaceX in Houghton, California. We wanted to have something that's easy manufactured that we can handle here in-house. So we developed this new material, so it's fabric-based.
We actually added a new layer to the suit, which we refer to as the Faraday layer, and this is a conductive cage around the suit that shields the suit from external electric fields.
The helmet on the EVA suit looks very similar to the IVA suit, but it is really an all-new design of that helmet. It's much more robust from a thermal structural perspective since it will be taking more extreme temperatures.
We are really excited to introduce this new single-pane visor helmet to the world of spacesuits. The EVA suit visor is made of polycarbonate and is coated with copper and ITO, or indium tinoxide. These two coatings together reflect the sun away from the crew, as well as reflecting infrared heat back to the crew when they are facing deep space. Our suit has a HUD, or heads-up display, which is a small display screen in the helmet, which is transparent, which allows the crew to see through the display to have unfettered access during their EVA, but it also provides critical telemetry to the crew, so pressure, temperature, relative humidity.
We're trying to improve the technology and streamline it in one way, and at the same time, we're also trying to get it more and more manufacturable with each generation. The ultimate goal is that you can put on a spacesuit and go out and get work done anywhere in the solar system and not feel like you're wearing anything more than you normally wear every day.
Love seeing how we have designed those suits from really the ground up. They look similar to the IVA suits, but there's so many enhancements and changes in order to make them suitable for an EVA, and we are definitely looking forward to seeing them in action in just a few days. But until then, let's take a look at how the actual EVA itself came together.
Stands for extravehicular activity, and it's any sort of operation in space where a human is getting out of the spacecraft. So in the case of Polaris Dawn, we're going to be testing the mobility of the suit. We're going to see if the in-space operation matches the training we've done here in Hawthorne. There's really a lot of different things that can happen during an EVA, and this is the first step for Dragon and SpaceX.
When I first started working at SpaceX, I never thought I'd be training a crew to do an EVA. It's brand new, it's so unique, we've never done anything like this before, and so we wanted to make sure we had the best possible training program for this mission.
We want to see if we can train a spacewalk on Earth in a way that's representative of what it feels like in space.
Even though only 2 people are going to be going outside during this first EVA, all 4 crew will be in EVA suits going down to vacuum.
Dragon was always designed to vent to full vacuum, but we've never taken a full Dragon capsule down to vacuum, and this will be the first time we do it in space.
We actually put crew into a chamber at Johnson Space Center in Houston and had them live the exact profile that they will experience, and making sure that no one actually experienced decompression sickness.
We have a couple new training assets for Polaris Dawn to train the EVA specifically. The suspension system that we have is situated on top of the platform of our capsule simulator. The lines drop through the hatch. They attach to a single crew member inside the capsule. We can lift them up and get them situated so that they can egress the capsule and perform their tasks at Skywalker, the mobility aid.
The Skywalker, what's amazing to me is a lot of people are going to think it's a metallic structure just bolted to the top of Dragon, but a lot of development effort, testing went into the Skywalker. So we actually used similar technology as we have in the Super Draco chambers to apply a thermal barrier coating to the outside of the Skywalker. That is going to be a really, really amazing mobility aid on the front end of Dragon.
We also developed a sideways simulator, so we flip the hatch on its side.
In the event the hatch fails to close, they can manually close the hatch. We had them do that in a sideways suspension system, so gravity isn't helping them close or helping them open that hatch mechanism.
It's new development for Dragon, it's new development for SpaceX and the industry as a whole. So this is a great example of where Polaris Dawn is forcing the team to innovate in a way that adds safety and reliability to every Dragon mission going forward.
That's this huge challenge for us to go solve, but that's also an opportunity for us to solve the problems that we have to go figure out anyway for our larger goals, like putting people on Mars.
The Polaris Dawn objectives are the first step towards that ultimate flight with humans inside of Starship, which is right along the SpaceX development path that we have towards getting to the Moon and Mars.
It is so exciting to see not only development of the EVA suit, but the EVA operations as well, and how so much has specialized for this mission with the goal of having the ability to open that top hatch and have Jared and then Sarah go out and test the mobility of the suit and the functionality. And to me, it's just so cool to be able to see the design and the planning that went into all of that to make what is about to happen.
Yeah, what I think is super cool is that historically, they've done training, and the crew has done, scuba diving, but typically training has been done in a swimming pool in their suits, right? But as we just saw, the training team got very creative and found different ways to not have to submerge, each crew member in their suits into water and have to deal with that, but be able to do this simulation training in a different way that made it a lot easier to maybe repeat the training and, keep the suits clean and be able to manage that, which I think is so cool.
Yeah, I think we really just kind of innovate across the board, right? Just every aspect of the mission, from the hardware to the training itself to just our processes. So it's really great to see all of that. One thing that actually really stuck out to me is the mention of how these suits will sort of be used in the far future. I love how we always keep just the big picture in mind. The goal of SpaceX, make humans an interplanetary species, get to the moon, get to Mars, get beyond. And so we really incorporate that into all of these sort of stepping stone missions, right? We're pushing the boundaries. We're doing this first EVA. We're developing these suits, but, maybe in a few years, who knows, we're going to be having thousands of people in these suits doing work all over the place on the moon, on Mars. It's just so inspiring and incredible to sort of be a part of that story and get to hear about some of that from the crew.
Yeah, and these suits, they look cool, but they're super functional, and thinking about what the future suits, the functionality that those suits will carry is I think that's a good point of just the far future, what will that look like is very, very cool.
Well, you talk about the far future, and it may be because it's going on 1 a.m. here, and we've got another hour and a half. But in the near future, my question is, Halloween's coming up in the United States. Anybody want to make a mock-up suit and go around trick-or-treat? Maybe your kids, It's like, hey, do you want to dress up in an EVA suit?
I bet we're going to see a lot of those this year, huh?
Yeah, the different style suits for the costume.
You don't have to just stick with the white and the gray. You could use some colors, a little bit like on Apollo lunar suits. where they would use different colored stripes to distinguish the commander, because in the photos, you're always going, who are we looking at? Oh, that's so-and-so and that's so-and-so.
Yeah.
I love that you guys were mentioning, the future and how we're trying to work towards that now. And they mentioned when they were making the spacesuit that they're thinking about the manufacturing. Obviously, I've been in manufacturing for almost my entire engineering career, so I love manufacturing. But I love that we think about that in the beginning stages of the design. I think that's so important, because design for manufacturability will make things a lot easier if you start with that versus designing something that may be functional but is really hard to manufacture and having to go back and make those updates and changes. So I think that's so cool that the spacesuit team really, really focused on that with this suit.
Yeah. It's been so incredible to see the progression from the IVA suit to the early versions of the EVA suit to the suit that we see there on your screen. My personal favorite element is not shield, the visor. There we go. That's the word. And the views that we will see of Jared and Sarah as they emerge from the top hatch. It's going to be incredible. And just the fact that just the visor itself, not only does it look cool, but it insulates them on the inside and the outside, depending, if they're looking toward the sun or away from it. It helps to keep them cool or warm, respectively. I think that's just, it looks awesome, but it has an important functionality to it as well.
Yeah.
Kate, you mentioned the moment that Jared and Sarah are going to exit the capsule, and we heard a little bit about that experience from Mike on his multiple EVAs, and a little bit about the overview effect. I think, traditionally, the public hasn't really had, a live view into these events. So it's truly a very unique, very historical and special event that we're also going to be live streaming for the public. We're going to see their first overview effect. We're going to see them have that experience and kind of get to be along for the ride with them. So pretty exciting.
That is so cool.
We will have our own overview effect. That's an excellent point.
Yeah, there's a camera inside of their helmet, so we'll actually get their personal perspective of that, at least for Jared and Sarah exiting the vehicles. But also we'll get to see Anna and kids, point of view from their camera too.
There's also a camera located on the Skywalker structure, so we'll also be able to see Earth/space with Jared/Sarah somewhere in that photo or video, which will be so cool.
Other one I'm interested, we've heard, for example, the Inspiration 4 crew talk about their thoughts. Jared comes back. He flew the first time into relatively low Earth orbit. So he saw his overview effect, but the Earth that close kind of fills up everything. Now he's going to be 1,400 kilometers up. Yeah, not doing the EVA right there, but he's going to look out through the windows. And Pete Conrad, when they went up on Gemini 11 in 1966 to just below where Jared and team are going, Pete was, he was out loud. The Earth is round. It looks different from this high. So it's like, okay, Jared, compare and contrast for everybody else who's stuck down here on Earth. What's it really like? Could you tell you are 1,400 kilometers up versus being, 250 kilometers or so the first time around on Inspiration 4?
Yeah, and even just the different viewpoint of having the cupola versus not, and, being able to stretch your arms out and not hit the domed structure would certainly be an experience. Although it's one of those things where it's like when you get on the roller coaster, you're told keep your hands inside the ride at all times. We know they have certain motions they're going to be doing to test out the mobility of the suit, but I hope they'll have an opportunity to just chill for a minute in the time that they are up there, because they're going to be seeing some incredible views.
Yeah, that's going to be super exciting. We'll get to watch them live the whole time. Again, as Atticus mentioned, we'll have live coverage, but also, they do have an EVA. It will be scheduled. They will need to follow some procedures. Obviously, the EVA is for a test. It's to test the EVA suits, but we do have some margin in there. So they might be able to get, if they're able to complete their test, they might just be able to get a minute or two to themselves to be able to enjoy that view.
Now, we are excited to watch that with them live whenever the EVA is actually happening. But for those of us who haven't experienced the overview effect personally, firsthand with our own eyes, here's a little bit more info on that phenomenon.
The overview effect is that sensation or that feeling that you get when you see our whole world from the perspective of being outside of it.
It ranges the whole spectrum from like how delicate the Earth may appear because, it's only this thin blue line that separates this habitable atmosphere of our home planet to, the vacuum of space.
It's hard to comprehend what the impact is going to be when I first see Earth from space. It just reminds us of how fragile our planet is. One of my roles on this crew is to shoot as much footage as we possibly can so we can bring it back and share it with the world.
The big picture awareness that you gain from that sort of perspective when you're, journeying amongst the stars and see our entire planet as we know it there outside of your window, and kind of the philosophical and the many different emotions that it provokes inside of you when you see it that way.
We have barely begun our journey to explore the worlds around us. And that hit me right when I saw the moon rise around Earth and saying, like, come on, it's been 50 years. We got to get back there, and we got to get to Mars, and we got to figure out how to get out of our own solar system and try and figure out what this is all about.
There's so much incredible footage that crew members have taken from space and that you see from satellites. I think it's one of the things I'm looking forward to most on the mission is getting to see the Earth from that perspective. I can't wait to share what that experience is, but I guess I'll have to let you know once I get back.
As you might imagine, the Polaris Dawn crew has spent a lot of time together through all of the training and preparation for this mission, and naturally that fostered some great camaraderie. So let's hear what the crew had to say about their team bonding.
I have so many wonderful memories working with this crew. One of the memories that stands out to me is back at the beginning of our relationship formation, and that was when we were climbing Cotopaxi together. The highs and lows of that experience and the mental toughness required really helped break down barriers and create a platform to form a trust.
I mean, you want to talk highs and lows, we were literally jumping out of airplanes. I think it just taught us an awful lot about each other and moments of like unbelievable happiness and super lows where things weren't going to plan.
Mountains, flying fighter jets. Honestly, I think it's just the mundane moments that we have together to gel as a crew and relying upon your crew, knowing when we need to ask for help.
We each do have things that we're not going to be the best at. We're not going to need to do everything. We can distribute the load to maximize what each person is bringing to the team. It's been such an adventure learning with them, learning about them, learning how to work with them. I don't think 5 days is going to be enough.
It is awesome to think about getting to live and work with each other for 5 days in this capsule. Getting to be with them while floating in space, doing work to contribute to long-term endeavors of human space flight. I am just so thrilled and excited and look forward to it.
Now, there are science and supplies going up on the Polaris Dawn mission, but also the crew is taking along some personal items for their 5-day trip around the planet. We caught up with the crew during training to get a little more insight on what each of them are planning to take to space.
What am I going to bring to space? I've thought long and hard about this one.
A book that I co-authored about a mama dragon that ends up training and flying to space.
my dad's necklace, jewelry for my wife, watches. I have a Thunderbird watch and a fighter weapons school watch.
I don't know, it's one of my takeaways after Inspiration 4 was it's kind of like camping, you brought too much. One of my actual debrief points was bring less.
When I got married to my husband, we went to the store and picked up a Cat in the Hat book. For our entire wedding, all of the ceremony was taped in this book, all of our vows were taped in the book, and then it got passed around and all the speeches got added to the book. And so it's just a very fun collection of very special memories captured in a very endearing Cat in the Hat book.
I'm going to bring this big hunk of metal that will go higher than anyone has ever flown in Earth orbit.
I'd love to be able to have some sort of a memorabilia for everyone who contributes to this, of which it's pretty hard because there's 10,000 plus SpaceXers. I guess I wish I could bring something for everyone who's made a difference in this program.
I will, in particular, get to read this story from space to my kids here on Earth, as well as some of the brave kids of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And I think that connection moment while I'm up there floating in space is something I'm just really excited to have the opportunity to have.
So as you can see here on your screen, the Polaris Dawn crew, the seats have rotated back into the launch position. So that is a good sign. Everyone remains comfortable, buckled into their seats. We're now just under an hour and a half until the next launch opportunity. And we are keeping our fingers crossed that the weather cooperates better this time than it did last time. So we saw a little bit there about what these four individuals are taking with them into space. I think Jared's advice was kind of interesting. Take less. I kind of agree with that. I personally would probably just take my wedding ring, some flower seeds to plant, and my favorite book. Speaking of which, we already mentioned it earlier, but it's just such a beautiful book. This is a book that Anna actually co-authored, and it is basically just like a story for her children, and she's taking a copy with her to space. And I'm going to order one for myself and very kindly ask her to sign it when she gets back.
Yeah, that's pretty cool that Anna gets to bring something that she wrote and created onto the vehicle with her. But Atticus, what would you take?
I don't know, maybe just some popcorn, some candy, some soft drinks,
some snacks.
Yeah, some snacks. It's a long trip potentially. So.
Would you save any for you to eat when you came back to Earth? Or
oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. Maybe share it with my friends, some space candy.
There you go.
Some
gifts.
What about you?
Oh, I would definitely have to bring a basketball.
Of course.
Basketball has made me who I am today, but what I really want to do is bring Space Jam to real life. That's my plan.
Amazing.
Yeah,
John,
your basketball will be your zero-G indicator.
That is genius, John.
Or a Nerf ball. Yeah, Nerf basketball.
There we go.
Not for a mission with an EVA operation, though.
Oh, yeah.
John, what would you take?
I'll be more of a sentimentalist. When I was in the Air Force, working Titan launch vehicles, not the ICBMs, but the above-ground launch vehicles, the Air Force only had one way to distinguish, and that was to give you a rocket badge that you would pin on to your uniform shirt. And so it said, yes, you're working launch vehicles. Well, I've had that since 1980 when I started working launch vehicles, and it's actually been to space and back on a Falcon 9 first stage. So I would take that well-worn and well-traveled badge, and I'd take it with me again, and away it would go.
Yep.
And then come back down. So it'd have 2 flights on it.
Yeah.
And it would be a rocket badge. It'd be pretty cool.
I also thought of another one that you could do, your binder. The infamous webcast binder, just like I always have my my notebook. I think those would be 2 staples if we were to go.
Yep. My brains.
Who knows, maybe we'll do a webcast from space one day, right? We'll have some of our own employees up there, maybe broadcast live. You never know, right? That could be cool.
Anna and Sarah are making the way for us to go up there. So that could be a thing.
Yeah. We heard earlier that kid puked the whole time during his training. That would be me, 100%. I can barely ride in the back of an Uber.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's a little bit more spicy than an Uber on the way up to space.
It's okay. I will hold down the fort here while you guys go.
It's only 4 Gs. Only 4 Gs.
Yeah. Anyway, we are continuing to count down to the next launch opportunity for the Polaris Dawn crew. For those of you that have just recently joined us, all 4 of our crew members are inside that Dragon capsule there on your screen. They are the only ones left at the launch pad. The closeout crew have departed the pad, and we unfortunately had to reset the countdown clock just past, I think it was like T minus 48 minutes. So unfortunately, there was a last minute radar scan that showed basically non-conforming weather requirements, and so we had to stand down and basically reset for our next opportunity, which is coming up in just an hour and 22 minutes. So the crew has remained in the Dragon capsule. Folks here for mission control are cycling through, getting an opportunity to stretch their legs, get some refreshments or some food, and really get refocused as we come back into almost right where we left off.
Yep, so as the clock continues to count, we're just at about T-minus 1 hour and 20 minutes. So far, everything with Falcon 9 and Dragon are being reported as healthy. But in the meantime, John, can we get a further status update?
Well, thanks, Atticus. T-minus 1 hour and 22 minutes, as you just saying. Everything is kind of in abeyance for the moment. We're waiting to get more information on weather. You can see a view of Dragon spacecraft on top of Falcon 9 at Launch Complex 39A on Kennedy Space Center. Lights are on in the crew access arm, but it doesn't mean anybody is in the arm. And you can see there on the screen the crew. We rotated their seats back into the launch position at T-minus 1 hour and 28 minutes, just about 7 minutes ago. Currently, we're slowly moving up on T-minus 1 hour where things start to pick up.
Update.
And here comes the weather update.
QLB. All weather rules just cleared about 30 seconds ago, so we have a green range for weather rules, and we'll have our SpaceX meteorologist fill you in for the next T0.
It's great to hear, and stay by.
And Dragon SpaceX weather officer here. We did violate a number of launch rules for that cumulus that popped up at that initial T0, so made a good call there from the whole team, SLD 45 and all. And we are tracking a much better POV for this next T0. The elbow is tracking a 35% chance of violation, and if everything holds as it currently looks for another 20-30 minutes, we should be able to step that POV down. But overall, looking good for this next launch attempt.
And copy that, weather officer. That's really great to know. 35% presently for POV, and should be stepping down in the next 20 minutes or so. Good to hear.
Okay, so they've told the crew that what we're just getting from the launch weather officer. The first launch attempt we had to hold as we got inside T-minus 45 minutes. A cell had popped up, and it looked like we were going to be no-go at T0, which would have scrubbed us for the morning. So instead, we held off before we began prop load into the Falcon 9. That preserved a second launch attempt coming up in just under 80 minutes from now. That T0 is planned for 9 hours, 23 minutes, 49 seconds universal time, or 5:23 and 49 seconds a.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Just about an hour or so before dawn there in Cocoa Beach, Florida. So hopefully they'll get a good view if the weather continues to dissipate. As I mentioned, we had the crew rotate seats back into the launch position at T-minus 1 hour and 28 minutes. On the SpaceX Falcon 9 side, the launch chief engineer is going through a technical readiness poll. making sure that the Falcon team is ready to pick up the count as we get inside T-minus 1 hour. Also amplify a little bit on the launch weather officer. It's always interesting. A probability of violation, or POV as they call it, of 35%. So that means essentially 1 chance in 3 of violating the weather constraints that we would have for a launch. It's interesting. An optimist would say it's a 60% probability of good weather. You know, I don't know why we do the probability of violation, but that's the history. It's been that for as long as I have known it. The big thing that is changing is that the weather was fairly chaotic over the last hour. It's very hard to model and predict as the boundary layer was coming ashore. What they're seeing right now in the weather radar is the boundary looks like it's dissipating. And as the Corps told the crew and the weather officer amplified, we ought to know more in about 20 minutes as we get down close to T-minus 1 hour, in which case the probability of violation may actually decrease, give us an even better chance. Still looking at a variety of things. The rain showers that we saw earlier on the camera lens, making sure that they've dissipated, that we don't fly through rain on the way up. We also want to make sure the big one is cumulus cloud rules. We don't want any thick, high-altitude clouds in the flight trajectory. And then, of course, continuing to watch the winds, but that looks to be pretty good. And if the rain dissipates and goes away, then the electric field intensity, which is currently green and go for launch, should also stay that way. So fingers crossed that the weather will continue to improve and we get a go here to continue through T-minus 1 hour and then prop load and take it the rest of the way on down. But right now, Kate, things are looking a little more optimistic than they were an hour or so ago.
Yeah, certainly better. Hearing that we've got a 35% chance of violating the weather requirements instead of 60, that's certainly a welcome improvement. So let's talk a little bit about the research that's going to be going up. So Polaris Dawn is the first of 3 planned missions in the Polaris program, and this will conduct extensive scientific research to expand our knowledge of humans adapting, living, and working in space. Much of this research is also intended to improve our lives down here on Earth.
And like all science and research, it begins with collecting tons of data, and that process started well before today. Let's take a look.
We are in the Houston SpaceX office today. We are here for our what we call L-30 or launch minus 30 days data collection for all of the research that we're doing on our mission. We have about 40 experiments, and a number of those required data collection pretty close to launch date. And so we are doing all of that data collection today, as well as doing some refresher training just to make sure we're really sharp on all of our procedures when we go to flight.
There's a lot of steps for each one of these science experiments. They're beneficial for not only improving and enhancing healthcare here on Earth, but it helps us continue this progression with space exploration.
What Kid and Anna are doing with the endoscope up through the nose and looking down at the vocal cords, I mean, that is not something easy to perform, in a hospital environment, let alone in space. They certainly stand to learn a lot from it. Reestablishing someone's airway, that's worthwhile to know if we're going to Mars someday. But I think that's a tough one to perform in space. But you got 2 really highly motivated individuals that are going to try and conquer it.
In space, there's inflammation. We don't have the impact of 1G pulling on that fluid. So we need to better understand what that inflammation looks like. And once we have a better understanding, we can develop the procedures and the equipment necessary to handle any type of triage situation.
When we stepped into this virtual reality scenario, I think Kid and I liked it a lot because they're flying a spacecraft on Mars to kind of gather like hand-eye coordination, motor skills, some cognitive abilities now, and then they're going to compare it to post-flight as opposed to whether or not we can successfully land on Mars.
One of the unique things of our missions, they're 3 to 5 days length. You maybe can't study the super long duration things, but what you can study is what happens immediately when you get up there and how soon these things start to take place. So this big problem in the astronaut community is called SANS, and it's where the astronaut's eyesight and ocular health start to degrade over time. So they will be wearing a contact that actually makes them look like a cyborg. It has little coils that can measure the interocular pressure, and then we can start testing countermeasures that might actually be able to prevent some of those negative effects.
We are doing an experiment called GVS disorientation, and this experiment, we wear a set of electrodes that sends electricity essentially through our brain between our inner ears and stimulates a disorientation and an imbalance to train astronauts' adaptation to different G environments and hope to quicken that readaptation. One of the things that we're doing with ultrasound is we are going to be collecting imagery of our veins and identifying whether there's actually bubbles forming when we are changing cabin pressure. It's very possible that nitrogen will bubble out into our blood. If we see bubbles, it will be completely normal and okay if we do see bubbles, but we are hoping to capture that on ultrasound.
In order for us to become multiplanetary, we've got to overcome some of these challenges associated with space exploration on longer duration missions. What we gather on orbit in a zero-G environment, in a vacuum, will help us continue this cause in furthering space exploration.
To date, Dragon has carried more than 1,000 research experiments to and from low Earth orbit and the International Space Station since 2012. Whether it's returning time-sensitive experiments from the International Space Station or bringing back science performed inside the spacecraft while in orbit, Dragon safely returns at home.
While docked with the International Space Station, Dragon can also act as a lab, providing extra room for astronauts to perform their work. And when the space station is fully booked, Dragon also serves as an extra bedroom when necessary.
Yeah, exactly, Kate. And actually, NASA astronaut Michael Hopkins, who joined us earlier in the show, slept inside of Dragon during his entire 6-month stay aboard the station.
Now, Dragon can also serve as a lab while orbiting Earth. During the Inspiration 4 mission back in 2021, the crew, as you see there, conducted research while traveling weightless at over 17,000 miles per hour, just as the Polaris Dawn crew will be doing over the next 5 days. Dragon's cargo capacity can be allocated for both crew essentials as well as scientific equipment dedicated to microgravity research and experiments.
Yeah, and in fact, SpaceX is currently accepting proposals for research studies and experiments to fly on Dragon. This could be research to understand mental and physical impacts while on orbit, exploring how to improve training, physical fitness, and mental well-being, or advancing medical care with the exploration of just-in-time training and tools. The selected research study groups will have access to SpaceX's crewed Dragon missions, opening up opportunities for researchers that might not otherwise have an opportunity to do so.
For more information about SpaceX's on-orbit research program, visit spacex.com/humanspaceflight/research. Now, as we mentioned at the start of the show, there are a number of firsts for this mission. The first commercial spacewalk, possibly reaching the highest Earth orbit ever flown for a crewed spacecraft, which, if that happens, it would break the altitude record set by the Gemini 11 mission, which was half a century ago.
Yeah, the Polaris Dawn crew will also be the first to attempt to use the Starlink network while in orbit. Dragon is carrying what we are calling a Starlink plug-and-placer.
And Dragon, we are cycling the orbit tank isolation valves again to equalize the low-flow pressure system.
Copy that, SpaceX. We're following.
And just a quick update from the core to the crew. Dragon is carrying what we are calling a Starlink plug-and-placer, and inside Dragon is a router connected to a user terminal in Dragon's trunk. Now, this terminal will be linked to the new plug-and-placer device that is mounted on board.
And all of this will be responsible for establishing and maintaining a laser communications link with Starlink satellites, which will be in orbit about 200 kilometers below Dragon. Using this hardware, Dragon will attempt to talk to Starlink the same way Starlink satellites talk between themselves with lasers. No one has ever flown a laser communication system on a human-rated spacecraft before, so there's a lot to be learned. If this works, the plug-and laser could provide the first high-speed internet experience for people traveling in space.
Yeah, this technology will also help here on Earth by facilitating healthcare access and connectivity to underserved communities around the world. The Polaris program is donating Starlink to St. Jude Global partners in 5 countries. Strong, reliable internet will help support the St. Jude Global mission by providing partners greater access to online medical conferencing, case and imaging sharing, and diagnostic assistance. Hospitals and foundations that are part of the pilot program will be able to provide better care to patients thanks to high-speed, low-latency broadband internet.
The first countries selected to receive Starlink include the Philippines, Brazil, Chile, Peru, and Mozambique. The Polaris team is also donating Starlink to 100 schools in Chile and Brazil, striving to increase internet connectivity, which can improve education and telemedicine efforts for communities in need. The Polaris Dawn crew actually had a chance to hear from the students in Chile after Starlink was installed.
¿Por qué los hombres van al espacio?
It's so important to go to space because there is so much of it and we know so little about it. How many of you would like to be an astronaut someday? There we go.
How many of you want to go with us on our mission?
They all want to go.
Starlink is also enabling the rapid development of SpaceX's Starship vehicle, which just completed its 4th flight test in June. Starlink on Starship once again enabled real-time telemetry and live high-definition video throughout every phase of entry, with external cameras providing views all the way to the flight's conclusion. Down at Starbase, Texas, we're continuing to build, test, and fly the world's most powerful launch vehicle ever developed.
SpaceX's ultimate goal is to make life multiplanetary, and Starship is the vehicle that will get us there. Starship is a fully reusable transportation system designed to carry a massive amount of cargo and large numbers of people to Earth orbit, the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Starship will be capable of carrying up to 200 metric tons to orbit and up to 100 passengers.
And we're still in the testing phase, but major milestones like flying at a high cadence, full reuse, and on-orbit refilling are key priorities. We're also building a second Starbase launch tower to further increase Starship's flight opportunities. This will also allow for continuous upgrades to the towers while continuing to launch. Now, also in testing, our engineers are proving out all systems necessary to make a trip to the moon possible, such as propulsion, life support, and even the elevator that will take the crew and cargo from the Starship hatch opening down to the lunar surface.
In partnership with NASA, Starship will put the first Artemis astronauts on the moon. The vehicle will perform one uncrewed demonstration flight before the Artemis 3 mission.
You are go for section 5 of 4.100. Report when you are go for launch.
Any copy that, SpaceX. We're stepping into section 5, 4.100.
All right, so just the core syncing up with the crew, informing them that we are continuing with the launch countdown. So I was talking about the Artemis 3 program, the Artemis program, specifically the Artemis 3 mission, and how the Starship vehicle, like the one that you see there on your screen, will perform an uncrewed demonstration mission before the Artemis 3 mission. And that will be the first human surface expedition since 1972. With the ability to deliver cargo and people to the lunar surface.
SpaceX, section 5, 4.100. Crews go for launch.
All right, that is...
Copy, crew is go for launch.
Music to our ears. Crew is once again still ready for launch. So with the ability to deliver cargo and people to the lunar surface, we'll be ready to help humanity build a sustainable presence on the moon and learn how to live off-world before the next step to Mars.
When the time comes for humans to explore the moon and beyond, they'll have to take everything with them for a surface expedition. Building bases or even cities will require huge amounts of cargo and eventually crew, and that's where Starship comes in.
This year is shaping up to be a busy one for Starship. As we mentioned, we completed the fourth flight test of Starship on June 6th down in Starbase, Texas, as you see there. The Super Heavy booster lifted off successfully and completed a full duration ascent burn.
Starship executed another successful hot stage separation, powering down all but 3 of Super Heavy's Raptor engines and successfully igniting the 6 second-stage Raptor engines before separating the vehicles. Following separation, the Super Heavy booster successfully completed its flip maneuver and boost back burn to send it back towards its splashdown zone.
The booster's flight ended with a landing burn and soft splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico, 7 minutes and 24 seconds into flight. The landing was caught by both the onboard camera as well as one of our marine buoys.
Meanwhile, Starship's 6 second-stage Raptor engines successfully powered the vehicle to space and placed it on the planned trajectory for coast. Starship made a controlled re-entry, successfully making it through the phases of peak heating and maximum aerodynamic pressure, demonstrating the ability to control the vehicle using its flaps while descending through the atmosphere at hypersonic speeds.
And speaking of those flaps, Starship provided live video throughout re-entry via SpaceX's Starlink satellites, providing most spectacular views. And we all cheered on the little flap that could as it hung on with the last strings for dear life. Now, these Starlink-enabled views, they were incredible, and we're looking forward to having similar incredible views on Polaris Dawn.
Yeah. Flight 4 ended with Starship igniting its 3 center Raptor engines and executing the first flip maneuver and landing burn since our high-altitude test campaign, followed by a soft splashdown of the ship in the Indian Ocean about an hour and 6 minutes after launch. The 4th flight of Starship made major strides to bring us closer to a rapidly reusable future. Its accomplishments will provide data to drive improvements as we continue rapidly developing Starship into a fully reusable transportation system.
Now, looking forward to Flight 5, we're getting ready to attempt the first ever tower catch of a booster. Now, returning the booster after launch is a core capability to Starship, becoming rapidly and reliably reusable.
And speaking of rapidly, as of August 21st, we had both towers fully stacked, which is so incredible to see.
That's a real photo. That's awesome.
So stay tuned for exciting updates as we get closer to this next launch. And as always, excitement is guaranteed.
Now, for those that have just recently joined us, you picked a great time because we are exactly 1 hour and 1 minute and 13 seconds away from launch. Welcome back to the coverage for the Polaris Dawn mission. The Polaris program is a first-of-its-kind effort to rapidly advance human spaceflight capabilities while continuing to raise funds and awareness for important causes here on Earth. The program's goal is to demonstrate important operational capabilities that will serve as building blocks to help further human exploration to the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Polaris Dawn is the first mission in the Polaris program. The program will consist of up to 3 human spaceflight missions that will demonstrate new technologies, conduct extensive research, and ultimately culminate in the first flight of SpaceX's Starship with humans on board.
The Polaris Dawn crew will be performing some incredible firsts in space, including the first ever commercial spacewalk. And this mission will fly higher than any Dragon mission to date, attempting to reach the highest Earth orbit ever flown for a crewed spacecraft, breaking the record set by Gemini 11 half a century ago. The crew will also be the first to test Starlink laser-based communications in space. They will orbit the Earth for up to 5 days before splashing down off the coast of Florida. And over the course of their mission in orbit, the crew will conduct a wide range of research in microgravity designed to advance both human health on Earth and our understanding of human health during future long-duration spaceflights.
Now, liftoff time is still holding for 5:23 a.m. Eastern, and we're currently tracking no technical issues with Falcon 9 or Dragon. The range is green, and weather at the moment is cooperating, but the last POV that we had was 35%, and we heard that it was going to improve as we get closer to T0, so fingers crossed it stays that way. Now, over the last more than 3 hours, I think more like 5 hours at this point, the Polaris Dawn crew donned their SpaceX suits and were then transported to the pad where our crew entered Dragon spacecraft, the one that you see there on your screen. Since arriving at the spacecraft, the crew were helped by our closeout team to get in their seats, those seats that you see there, attach their suits to the special umbilicals that provide breathing air and communication link to Dragon systems. They conducted successful leak checks and communications checks with the core here in Hawthorne, and that is the person who they will be speaking to directly throughout the mission. That stands for Crew Operations Resource Engineer.
Yeah, and the closeout team was able to seal the hatch, which also gets its own leak check. And the closeout team has already departed the pad. Once that hatch was sealed, they were able to clear the area and clear the pad. And now we've been doing some weather checks as we got closer and closer to T0. So again, we will be doing another final go, no go for launch. Before we get to that final go, no go, the next team will do an internal poll, making sure that conditions are right with Falcon 9, Dragon, the crew, the range, and the weather, of course. T-minus 1 hour until liftoff is the final evaluation checkpoint, or the last opportunity for the SpaceX team to adjust the launch time if it's needed. And with everything so far on track, let's take a moment to meet the crew that will be flying today.
The Polaris Dawn mission has many time objectives, so the Polaris program chose a crew of experts who know each other well and have a foundation of trust that they can build upon as they undertake challenges of this mission. Mission Commander Jared Rook Isaacman served as commander of Inspiration 4, the world's first all-civilian mission to space. Jared holds...
for a weather update.
Go, SpaceX.
Dragon, we are currently go for launch. Updated probability of violation is 20%. So with that, we are going to be pressing towards T02. We'll keep you updated if any other weather comes through.
Hey, copy that.
So as we just heard, our opportunity for launching is sounding better and better. The probability of violation for weather rules has decreased from 35% probability to 20%. So that is excellent news. Now, let's talk a little bit about our mission commander, Jared Rook Isaacman. He served as commander of Inspiration 4, the world's first all-civilian mission to space. Jared holds several world records, including 2 speed around the world flights in 2008 and 2009 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. He has flown in over 100 air shows as part of the Black Diamond Jet team, dedicating every performance to charitable causes. In 2011, Jared co-founded what would become the world's largest private air force, Draken International, and that trains pilots for the U.S. Armed Forces. In addition to his role as CEO of Shift 4, Jared is an accomplished pilot and astronaut with over 7,000 flight hours.
Mission pilot Scott Poteet served as mission director of Inspiration 4, and he goes by his call sign, Kid. A retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, Kidd served for 20 years in roles that included commander of the 64th Aggressor Squadron, Thunderbird No. 4 demonstration pilot, U.S. Air Force Weapons School graduate, operational test and evaluation pilot, and flight examiner. Kidd is a command pilot with over 3,200 flying hours and has logged over 400 hours of combat time. Following his Air Force career, Kidd served in various roles, including VP of Strategy at Shift 4.
Mission Specialist Sarah Cooper Gillis is a lead space operations engineer at SpaceX, responsible for overseeing the company's astronaut training program. She helped prepare NASA astronauts for the Demo 2 and Crew 1 missions, and most recently directly trained the Inspiration 4 astronauts. Sarah is an experienced mission control operator who has supported real-time ops for Dragon's cargo resupply missions to and from the International Space Station as a navigation officer and as a crew communicator for Dragon's human spaceflight missions. In 2015, while studying at the University of Colorado Boulder, Sarah started an internship at SpaceX before moving into the astronaut training program full-time.
And to cap off the Polaris Dawn crew, mission specialist and medical officer Anna Walker-Menon, who also serves as a lead space operations engineer at SpaceX, where she manages the development of the crew operations and works in mission control as both a mission director and crew communicator. During her time at SpaceX, Anna has led the implementation of Dragon's crew capabilities and developed critical operational responses to vehicle emergencies. Prior to SpaceX, Anna worked for 7 years at NASA as a biomedical flight controller for the International Space Station. She received her bachelor's degree in mathematics and Spanish from the Texas Christian University and her master's degree in biomedical engineering from Duke University.
And that is our Polaris Dawn crew and the first SpaceX employees to fly on a SpaceX mission. Anna and Sarah also supported Inspiration 4 and actually served as trainers for the crew of that mission. So I can only imagine how incredible and the feelings that they have and how wild it is to experience a launch from the other side of the mission. Now, as the Polaris Dawn crew prepared for this mission, they had a pretty cool opportunity to sit down with a legend of spaceflight, Apollo astronaut Charlie Duke, one of only 4 surviving moonwalkers from the Apollo program. He flew on the Apollo 16 mission to the lunar surface in 1972, and more than 50 years later, he had some great advice for our crew in advance of the first ever commercial spacewalk.
And we have a liftoff. The swing arm is moving back. I can see all the way to the ground, just like we're on the LTV. Piece of cake.
Welcome to our mission control.
Thank you very much.
We copy you down, Eagle. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
What emotions run through your head as you watch that?
For Apollo 11, it was really tense. Yeah, the tension in mission control was through the roof. You know, I was more tense in that landing when I actually did it. Because, you know, in the spacecraft, you're seeing all the systems, whereas in mission control, you're just looking at a little screen, you know. And I was never were this big. They were just little things. First off, I want to say thank you for inviting me to come out and get a briefing from y'all and maybe throw a little piece of advice every once in a while to you.
You're one of the 12 humans in history that has gotten to walk on the face of the moon, and now you're sitting here at SpaceX. I'm curious what your aspirations, your hopes, your dreams are for the future of human space exploration.
Well, I'm excited about the privatization of space. When it first came about, I was a little dubious, but then it was quickly obvious that SpaceX knew what they were doing. And I've been a big supporter of what SpaceX is doing in space and manned and unmanned launches. I'm impressed with this facility, and the first time I've been here.
Well, sir, it is a real honor. It is a real honor to have you here and have this conversation. Polaris Dawn, sir, is the first of up to 3 missions that are contemplated. So we're going to vent down the vehicle and conduct a spacewalk. And we're going to test out a new spacesuit that the engineers at SpaceX here have been developing. It's to learn really as much about this new generation suit that SpaceX has built and then the entire operation associated with it. I'll be one of the crew members that goes outside the vehicle. Sarah will be as well. And then Kit and Anna are going to be inside the vehicle in kind of supporting capacity and be the eyes and ears of, while we're outside.
Is that visor assembly separate from your...
The whole thing is integrated.
It's all integrated.
Yeah, it's a spiral waist zipper that we don and doff the suit.
It's important to have a suit that works. I mean, it's mobile and fits.
Sir, based on your training experiences, what was the most memorable thing you went through?
Let me cover something that's very similar to y'all's, and that's the Trans-Earth EVA.
Are you ready, Charlie? Roger, copy. Looks like the old moon.
Both the Apollo 15, 16, and 17 had no problems with the Trans-Earth EVAs. They're very spectacular. I mean, the view, that was my most impressive memory, really, is to float out, and there was the Earth down here about 180,000 miles away. And my job basically was hook myself in so I don't float off and hold on. How long are you depressurized?
So for the spacewalk, based on the vehicle design and what we can support, we have about 2 hours end to end for both depressurizing external operations and then repressurizing the spacecraft. But we'll all get suited up, depressurize the spacecraft, and then 2 people, one at a time, will go outside, come back in before we repressurize the spacecraft.
My advice is don't let go.
That's good advice.
I wish you well, and thank you.
The goal of SpaceX is to build technologies necessary to make life multiplanetary. And this is the first time in the 4 billion year history of Earth that it's possible to realize that goal. Missions like Polaris Dawn are helping accelerate those efforts by developing and testing technologies that will enable humans to live and work in space, while also improving life for us here and now.
I'm a total believer in the SpaceX mission and vision. I think the world is a more interesting place when you can journey among the stars. I believe that a lot of the questions that human beings have asked themselves since the beginning of time are probably out there, and we've barely scratched the surface, and SpaceX is trying to change that.
Polaris Dawn has some really ambitious objectives, and the missions that follow it will also as well. And the hopes for all of these is that we will develop technologies and test technologies that will help SpaceX ultimately achieve its long-term ambitions of making human life interplanetary.
What's really unique about the Polaris Dawn mission is it's a development mission. So not only are we taking the basic fundamentals of how to live in Dragon and operate the spacecraft, but we're now adding whole new operations for new suits, new systems, a new repressurization system in the capsule. There are whole new procedures for executing the spacewalks. We are doing incredible things, and we are changing the world, and we are making history.
The men and women of this organization, the level of intelligence, it's unmatched. And that's why we're so passionate about our mission and about what SpaceX is continuing to do with their vision to further space exploration.
There's a lot of things that you can be on either side of debate on, but for sure, it's okay to put a small percentage of our resources in advancing our species, and along the way, completely change the trajectory for humans on this planet in a positive way. And we can try and fix some of the day-to-day problems too. It doesn't have to be this either or, but yet so often it is.
We're coming up on T-minus 46 minutes. The launch director and the launch team have conducted their electronic poll. The launch director has also checked with the Dragon mission director for their readiness. Everything continues to look good. We're going to be hearing some instructions from the SpaceX launch director. He'll be making announcements on the control room lockdown and protocols for hold or launch escapes. And he'll also be reminding the team that inside of T-minus 10 seconds, only the computer can abort the launch. Now, once the LD, the launch director, gives these instructions, they will clear the team to proceed with moving the crew arm away from the launch vehicle. You can see the arm is in the access position right now, but once we get...
Poll is complete, and the team is ready for crew access arm retract, propellant loading, and launch. Both control rooms will go into lockdown at T-minus 45 minutes and remain in that state until the launch escape system is disarmed. All operators are remain at their console and maintain a sterile cockpit until MD confirms successful disarming the launch escape system following orbit insertion or propellant offload in the event of a scrub. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the C or LD, and they'll approve during the countdown. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off, relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count. Operators advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. Launch control, you may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
We've heard the instructions. We're waiting to hear them inform the crew that access arm retract has started. We're also watching on the monitors as we see the crew access arm, waiting for it to begin into motion. Now, once we get through this, then we will be arming the launch escape system. And there's a view.
Crew axis arm retraction has started.
Crew axis arm retraction has started. Once that's all the way back in the stowed position, we'll arm the launch escape system, proceed down to propellant load starting at T-minus 35 minutes. One other update, weather probability of violation, as we mentioned, down to 20%, and they just checked with the launch weather officer. Nothing appears to be in the area that would be a risk to T0 in just over 44 minutes. And Jesse, you can see crew axis arm starting to come back now.
Yeah, this is a very exciting moment here. This is one of the last major visual milestones that we'll see in preparation for liftoff. And soon we should also hear the call out that the
Crew axis arm retraction is complete.
And great call there. That is the conclusion or completion of the crew axis arm retraction. We should also hear the call out for the launch escapes.
Dragon, you are go for section 6. Close visors and arm the launch escape system.
Copy that, SpaceX. We are stepping into section 6. We're going to close visors and arm LES.
And there it is. They're getting ready to arm the launch escape system. And the crew is closing their visors, which you can see there. This is in preparation for that arming of the launch escape system. And then also coming up will be Falcon 9 prop loading beginning.
Yeah, we can see their tablets there on their legs, strapped on top of their
SpaceX
suits.
Dragon, section 6.2, our visors are closed, and we are proceeding with arming LES.
SpaceX copies.
So those tablets that they have provide all the information that they need for the mission. The crew, as you can see, reporting that they are ready for the next steps, reporting that all their visors are closed. Arming of the launch escape system now coming up.
And we're just waiting for the call out.
Launch escape system is verified armed.
Copy that, SpaceX. We show the same.
Yep, that's
SpaceX
good news.
Dragon, we're closing out 4.100.
4.100, a reference to
SpaceX copies, closing 4.100.
That's a procedure the crew is running on their tablets. So with that, the launch escape system is now armed. Should something happen that requires Dragon to execute an emergency escape, if something were to happen to the Falcon 9 or the pad right now, the system is ready to go. There's another key reason. Once we got the crew access arm back, we went right into arming the launch escape system, because once that system is armed, should we need to have the crew leave but depart via the crew access arm, that arm took a minute or so to retract. It can actually come back into the support position much faster than that. So there's a high-speed mode, but that high-speed mode requires that we be in the armed configuration so that it'll be enabled. So if that was needed, the crew could then leave the hatch, go down the arm, and depending upon the direction, they can take the elevators. The elevators are currently at level 255. When the ground team left the pad, they send the elevators back up. So if the crew needs them, they're right there. And of course, we have the slide wire basket system on 39A is another way. So there's several ways if the crew had to leave. But the good news is, coming up 40 minutes before launch, everything continues to go well, technically, on Falcon 9 and Dragon, and it looks like the weather has begun to cooperate now. Now, next major event coming up at T-minus 35 minutes will be the start of propellant loading on Falcon 9. Once we get into that, then we're committed to the T0, even though there's still more time in the window and a third launch opportunity if we need it. We would not be able to take advantage of that if we get propellant going into the Falcon 9. Again, the views from 39A, the arm is retracted. You can't tell it, but Launch Escape System is armed on the Dragon spacecraft. It's quiet right now on the nets. Team is mostly just waiting for the clock to get to 35.
And this is getting pretty exciting. You know, we were very close to this point about an hour and a half ago. And again, we did make that call due to weather to move the T0. And we did that prior to propellant loading, because once we start propellant loading, we're basically committed to that T0, which was a great call, again, from the team on monitoring the weather and going for the second T0, which has a much better probability of good weather at the T0. So very, very exciting.
Yeah, definitely. We were operating at a 60% probability of violation, i.e. 40% favorable at the original T0. Called it off just before prop loading. And now, fast forward to hour and a half, 2-ish hours later, we're now closer to 20%, or not closer, we are at 20% probability of violation, so 80% favorable. So definitely a significant increase. And as you said, stepping into prop load is a pretty strong vote of confidence that we're going to be able to make it. Hopefully, fingers crossed, there is always that 20%. But we are optimistic that we're going to see our Polaris Dawn crew in orbit sooner than later.
And it shows, this is a perfect example of, why we have all these procedures and these milestones where we're checking in throughout the countdown to make sure that, we have opportunities to make the right decision, again, for safety being the number one thing that we're always looking out for, especially with crew on board, but just for any mission. And we were able to...
Falcon 9 tanks will vent for the start of propellant load in 5 seconds.
Yeah, we'll be hearing call-outs throughout the countdown up to the crew to let them know what's happening, both Falcon 9 and Dragon. And then we'll also hear call-outs on SM.
Yeah, and the Corps is keeping them updated so that they, there's going to be new sounds coming inside of the vehicle, and the Corps can keep them updated since they won't be able to see what's happening, but they might be able to hear it. So they'll be able to monitor, those familiar sounds or those expected sounds as the Corps is updating them with each milestone.
Now, our next major event, as we've mentioned, is the start of propellant loading onto the Falcon 9. We'll hear that starting at T-minus 35 minutes. We also may hear the call-out launch auto sequence has started. That is the ground computer program that controls the last 35 minutes. And we should also, as we mentioned, hear the launch director call out to the crew that propellant loading has begun. Propellant loading sequence on the Falcon 9 begins with loading fuel onto both the first and the second stages. That's the RP1 kerosene fuel that we use. We'll also begin with liquid oxygen loading onto the first stage. Now, the second stage fuel loading will finish up fairly quickly at about T-minus 20 and a half minutes. And then 4 minutes after that, we'll begin loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage. But right now, T-minus 35 minutes, 30 seconds. Everything continues to go well. We're waiting for the handover from the countdown master sequence to the launch automatic sequence to begin propellant loading. Once that begins, that'll commit us to a launch early this morning here at Pad 39A in Florida. We'll listen in now for the start of propellant loading.
The launch auto sequence has started.
And great call out there. We just heard that the launch auto sequence has begun. This means that propellant loading has begun on Falcon 9. Now we are T-minus 34 minutes and 45 seconds from liftoff. Dragon was loaded with its propellants about a couple weeks ago, just a few miles down the road at what we call Dragon Land. In order to fly, Dragon needs a fuel and an oxidizer. And for the fuel, we use monomethylhydrazine, or MMH, and nitrogen tetroxide, or NTO, for the oxidizer. Now, together, these propellants feed the Draco engines that maneuver Dragon on orbit, as well as the 8 Super Draco engines that would power the launch escape system in an abort scenario.
And again, now that fueling for Falcon 9 has started, that means the 8 Super Draco engines inside Dragon are ready, if needed, to launch the capsule away from the Falcon 9 rocket in an instant, should there be any kind of emergency associated with the rocket or the pad.
Now, some of you are very familiar with the vehicles on the launch pad today, but for those of you who aren't, no worries. We're about to make you instant experts. Now, on the left side of your screen is a live view of our Falcon 9 rocket with the Dragon spacecraft on top. Together, they stand about 229 feet tall. Falcon 9, of course, is a reusable 2-stage rocket, which means it's kind of like 2 rockets in one, the first stage and the second stage. The first stage is the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle. You can see soot from the previous 3 missions that this booster has flown, and those missions include NASA Crew 8 as well as 2 Starlink missions. The first stage is responsible for accelerating Falcon and Dragon through Earth's atmosphere and into space. To do that, it has 9 Merlin engines at the bottom of the stage. Prior to liftoff, the Falcon 9 first stage is loaded up with nearly 1 million pounds of fuel and liquid oxygen. At liftoff, the Merlin engines use these propellants to provide the first stage with a thrust greater than 5 747 airplanes at full power. And these engines consume about 700 gallons of fuel per second. The first stage accelerates the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere into space, and then separates from the rest of the rocket at just about 2.5 minutes into flight. From there, the first stage will do what no other orbital-class rocket in the world can do. It will make its way back down to Earth and target a landing on our drone ship. Just read the instructions, which you can see there on your screen. And this drone ship is currently parked in holding position a couple hundred miles downrange in the Atlantic Ocean. Our drone ships are essentially autonomous powered spaceports, and they allow our rocket to land offshore. For reference, our drone ships are about the size of a football field, so while they may look small on screen, they're actually pretty big in real life. Reusability is a critical part of our goal of making life multiplanetary. And to that end, we're working toward qualifying our fleet of Falcon boosters and fairings to support up to 40 missions each. As mentioned previously, Falcon 9 is a 2-stage rocket, and above the first stage is the second stage. The second stage has a single Merlin vacuum, or MVAC engine, and this engine ignites after stage 1 separates from stage 2. The second stage is essentially a smaller version of the first stage, and while the first stage gets us out of the Earth's atmosphere and away from the extreme forces of gravity, the second stage is designed to operate in the vacuum of space and deliver payloads, like Dragon today, to their target drop-off orbit. And of course, we have a great team here at SpaceX that will be monitoring both Falcon 9 and Dragon after liftoff.
And like Atticus said, we have teams here in Mission Control, Hawthorne, and that team is responsible for close monitoring of the crew and Dragon every step of the way as the spacecraft orbits the planet along its customized flight path. On console or headset are a number of positions who are monitoring the health of the vehicle and crew. The mission director, responsible for mission success, is in charge of that room. And the person that you'll hear talking to the astronauts, and the person we have been hearing speaking to the astronauts, is the crew.
Stage 1 cryohelium load has started.
The Crew Operations and Resources Engineer, or CORE. The other positions are focused on things like navigation and control of the vehicle, avionics, software, propulsion, life support systems, and communications with ground segments.
And different members of the SpaceX team will rotate through these positions throughout the mission to ensure 24/7 coverage of the crew and Dragon through splashdown, which will be about 5 days from now. And it's worth mentioning that 2 of our crew members, Anna and Sarah, have sat in these very seats before as part of the SpaceX team. Anna served in mission control during multiple Dragon missions, including Demo 2, Crew 1, CRS 22 and 23, Crew 3 and Crew 4, as well as Axiom 1. And Sarah has supported real-time operations for Dragon's cargo resupply missions to and from the International Space Station as a navigation officer and as a crew communicator for Dragon's human spaceflight missions. And now they'll get to see what it's like from the other side inside of Dragon.
Although Anna and Sarah have trained astronauts for SpaceX missions, they were not exempt from going through that exact training themselves. The Polaris Dawn crew has gone through the same rigorous SpaceX training as our NASA astronauts. Plus, they also had to train to perform an EVA, or an extracurricular vehicle activity.
We had an opportunity to talk to Anna, Jared, Kid, and Sarah about their training experiences, and here's what they had to say.
The bulk of the training has been rightfully focused on the EVA, or the spacewalks. In a development program, you don't know what you need to train to. Like, how can we run pressurized operations, simulate microgravity, but also have like a simulator that's powered, with hatches to get in and out of, so we don't have to submerge that in a pool.
We looked at a suspension system solution where we can set up a physics model that allows you to pressurize the suit, put on a harness, and then a hoist will lift a suited crew member up. And you can basically use one finger and you press down and your whole body will move up, just like in space.
It allowed us to really put into practice the different piece-by-piece steps that are necessary to complete this operation safely.
One aspect of our training has been scuba diving. The buoyancy allows us to kind of experience a different environment. The lack of communication is a challenge associated with scuba diving.
You rely on alternate forms of communication. You'll use different hand signals to communicate, like I'm okay, you're okay. So I would say scuba diving has a ton of great training lessons that are directly applicable to our spacewalk.
I have to say, I think the max fun here was the skydiving we did at the Air Force Academy. That was some of the best training ever.
When I dropped out of that airplane, sitting in the airplane as I was going up, I felt those nerves, all of that rush of emotions that comes with, recognizing that you are about to do a really high consequence operation.
And you're standing out, leaning into the wind, out of an aircraft, and then you just let go and you fall. It was incredible training, some of the most memorable training we've done.
For the centrifuge training, the purpose is to go through both a launch and a reentry, as well as a launch escape mission profile in this human centrifuge that's spinning you around and imparting forces on your body that are similar to the ones that we will experience when we go through those operations actually in space.
When you're in space, you have to deal with the circumstances that you're dealt. Similar fashion is climbing a mountain. You're on the side of a mountain, it's taken days to get to where you're at, approaching the summit. You're dehydrated, you're hungry. You learn to manage those stressors. And those are all good preparation techniques in getting ready for space exploration.
We've had it all. We've had unbelievable, highs, and we've had, lows. It's just been a great 2 years of growth. Some of the best times of my life.
Before the segment, I called it an extracurricular activity. My brain is clearly tired. It's extravehicular activity. And as we mentioned earlier, much of the training that the crew went through was to prepare them to perform that extravehicular activity, or an EVA. Because Dragon does not have an airlock, the entire cabin will be depressurized. So essentially, all 4 astronauts will be performing the EVA. Jared and Sarah will exit the spacecraft to perform their tasks, while Kid and Anna remain inside to conduct their experiments and act as the ears and eyes. The EVA will last about 2 hours from the time that the cabin air is vented to when it is repressurized again.
As they prepare for the EVA, the crew...
Stage 2 cryohelium load has started.
Good call-outs there. As they prepare for the EVA, the crew will go through a pre-breathing procedure, which will involve slowly dropping the atmospheric pressure of Dragon while increasing the concentration of oxygen in the air. This process is similar to what is known as a safety stop in the diving community. This will give their bodies plenty of time to acclimate to the difference in pressure ahead of the EVA.
SpaceX designed the EVA suits for the Polaris Dawn crew, and they'll wear it during the spacewalk. The EVA suits protect the crew inside the spacecraft while also allowing them to leave the spacecraft when needed.
Upgrades include new joint designs that remain soft until pressurized while maintaining mobility, improved thermal management, and an upgraded helmet with an exterior coating that acts like a sun visor, along with a camera and heads-up display that provides information on the status of the suit during the spacewalk.
Let's take a look at the making of the suits that our crew will be wearing during the first ever commercial EVA.
An EVA suit is an extravehicular activity suit, which is a spacesuit that can go outside of the spacecraft to do a spacewalk. We started with the IVA suit that we have, the intravehicular activity suit, as a kind of starting point, and looked at it and said, what would we have to change about this to be able to support a spacewalk? So the first is mobility. The crew will have to do a lot of moving around inside of Dragon to get outside and do the spacewalk. We had to add in new joints and new features in the suit to allow them enhanced mobility while the suit's pressurized.
When a crew member is pressurized in the suit, the soft portions of the suit become rigid. They need actual flexure and rotational joints to allow them to move around. It's kind of like a suit of armor made of fabric. We innovated in flexure joints to allow easy bending at the elbows and the knees, as well as a collapsible rotator joint that exists on the shoulder, which allows the suit to remain nearly fully soft, but when pressurized is a rotational bearing.
The difference between the IVA and the EVA suit is that on the IVA suit, the zipper system location is in the inseam. But since we needed to have lots of mobility on our EVA suit, that was not their choice. By moving the zipper system from the inseam to the waist, we mitigated risk of the stress of the zipper.
And another big element was also the thermal side of things. The crew is obviously exposed to a much more extreme thermal environment during the EVA. So we want to make sure that the inside of the suit is comfortable for them, and that as they interface with parts of the vehicle, that is safe for them to touch as well.
The EVA suit is built and designed here at SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. We wanted to have something that's easy manufactured that we can handle here in-house. So we developed this new material, so it's fabric-based.
We actually added a new layer to the suit, which we refer to as the Faraday layer, and this is a conductive cage around the suit that shields the suit from external electric fields.
The helmet on the EVA suit looks very similar to the IVA suit, but it is really an all-new design of that helmet. It's much more robust from a thermal structural perspective, since it will be taking more extreme temperatures.
We are really excited to introduce this new single-pane visor helmet to the world of spacesuits. The EVA suit visor is made of polycarbonate and is coated with copper and ITO, or indium tinoxide. These two coatings together reflect the sun away from the crew, as well as reflecting infrared heat back to the crew when they are facing deep space. Our suit has a HUD, or heads-up display, which is a small display screen in the helmet, which is transparent, which allows the crew to see through the display to have unfettered access during their EVA, but it also provides critical telemetry to the crew, so pressure, temperature, relative humidity.
We're trying to improve the technology and streamline it in one way, and at the same time we're also trying to get it more and more manufacturable with each generation. The ultimate goal is that you can put on a spacesuit and go out and get work done anywhere in the solar system and not feel like you're wearing anything more than you normally wear every day.
Between 190 to 700 kilometers above Earth, the Polaris Dawn crew will attempt the first ever commercial spacewalk. Here's how it all came together.
EVA stands for extravehicular activity, and it's any sort of operation in space where a human is getting out of the spacecraft. So in the case of Polaris Dawn, we're going to be testing the mobility of the suit. We're going to see if the in-space operation matches the training we've done here in Hawthorne. There's really a lot of different things that can happen during an EVA, and this is the first step for Dragon and SpaceX.
When I first started working at SpaceX, I never thought I'd be training a crew to do an EVA. It's brand new, it's so unique, we've never done anything like this before, and so we wanted to make sure we had the best possible training program for this mission.
We want to see if we can train a spacewalk on Earth in a way that's representative of what it feels like in space.
Even though only 2 people are going to be going outside during this first EVA, 4 crew will be in EVA suits going down to vacuum.
Dragon was always designed to vent to full vacuum, but we've never taken a full Dragon capsule down to vacuum, and this will be the first time we do it in space.
We actually put crew into a chamber at Johnson Space Center in Houston and had them live the exact profile that they will experience, and making sure that no one actually experienced decompression sickness.
We have a couple new training assets for Polaris Dawn to train the EVA specifically. The suspension system that we have is situated on top of the platform of our capsule simulator. The lines drop through the hatch. They attach to a single crew member inside the capsule. We can lift them up and get them situated so that they can egress the capsule and perform their tasks at Skywalker, the mobility aid.
The Skywalker, what's amazing to me is a lot of people are going to think it's a metallic structure just bolted to the top of Dragon, but a lot of development effort, testing went into the Skywalker. So we actually used similar technology as we have in the Super Draco chambers to apply a thermal barrier coating to the outside of the Skywalker. That is going to be a really, really amazing mobility aid on the front end of Dragon.
We also developed a sideways simulator, so we flip the hatch on its side.
In the event the hatch fails to close, they can manually close the hatch. We had them do that in a sideways suspension system, so gravity isn't helping them close or helping them open that hatch mechanism.
It's new development for Dragon, it's new development for SpaceX and the industry as a whole. So this is a great example of where Polaris Dawn is forcing the team to innovate in a way that adds safety and reliability to every Dragon mission going forward.
That's this huge challenge for us to go solve, but that's also an opportunity for us to solve the problems that we have to go figure out anyway for our larger goals, like putting people on Mars.
The Polaris Dawn objectives are the first step towards that ultimate flight with humans inside of Starship, which is right on the SpaceX development path that we have towards getting to the Moon and Mars.
All right, we are T-minus 17 and just under a half minutes until liftoff of Polaris Dawn. This mission will fly higher than any Dragon mission to date. There'll be lots of research experiments performed while the crew is on orbit, and most notably, they're going to perform the first ever commercial spacewalk. We're super excited to see the clock continue to count down. The crew is in their seats. The vehicle is actually being loaded with propellants as we speak. That began at T-minus 35 minutes. The launch system is armed, and we have gotten the okay to go from the crew. They are ready to go to space.
Yeah, it's super exciting. We've got their new EVA suits on board with the crew. This will be the first time that we've ever flown these EVA spacesuits, which I think is...
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
Which I think is one of the most exciting parts about this mission. And we did get a good call that Stage 2 LOX liquid oxygen loading is now beginning on the vehicle.
Now, this mission will orbit Earth for about 5 days. And in addition to the first commercial spacewalk, it'll be the first time that we will be utilizing our newly designed Skywalker hardware, which I love the name. And it is a mobility aid that Sarah and Jared will use in their EVA suit testing during their EVA. So we are very much looking forward to the launch in just over 15 and a half minutes now. And everything so far looking good. We had much improved weather conditions when our first T0 occurred was 12:38. Wasn't so great. Here we are sometime later, and we're looking at a 20% favorability. So As you can see on your screen, like I said, about 15 minutes from the liftoff of Polaris Dawn. Lots of excitement building here in the building in Hawthorne, just outside of Mission Control. Now, I can only imagine what the crew is feeling as the clock counts down. Now, as we all wait together, let's hear from some of the crew of the Inspiration 4 mission as they reflect on what they were feeling just before their mission liftoff.
I gotta say, right now, launching, people always ask me if I was afraid as soon as the engines lit and started taking off. And I was like, no, I was ready. But for me, you know, liftoff was really about concentrating on my job as the mission pilot. And I was wondering, because you guys, you know, were able to kind of sit there and enjoy it and sense it. How was it for you?
Launch was the most fun I've ever had. I was just so excited, and people had been asking me, like, are you going to be nervous? And I thought I would be, but I just, again, I kept waiting to get nervous, and it didn't come. And then they're counting down from 10, and I remember saying, let's do this. Oh. And I might have had an expletive in there, too. But then, you know, we're hearing the 10 count, and it's delayed because of the delay from Mission Control. And so we're hearing, like, they're on maybe 2 whenever we're actually lifting off. Right. But Jared was giving us his own count. And I remember he said something like, all right, guys, get ready. And then we felt this big jolt. And then, of course, a lot of G-forces that came on really quickly. But it was just so smooth. Yeah. And I remember I had the biggest smile on my face. Like, I was having so much fun.
Yeah. And for me, it wasn't just sitting there idly going for a ride. It was thinking about, okay, what am I hearing? What's that pressure I'm feeling through my chest? Because this is happening probably just once, right? And so how do you share this? How do you tell someone what you're going through in this moment if you're not paying attention to everything? And so that's what I was really trying to do, was, you know, look between my toes at the window, or look over at your screen, Cyan, and see, you know, where we are.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could see how much you could see, because I couldn't see out the, you know, I was laser focused on listening to Jared and watching the monitor, and I was surprised at how smooth it was, because I was expecting for it to be a little bit more, you know, where the monitors are going like this, but it wasn't at all. Mm-hmm. But I always wondered, did you look between your toes and see? Could you see out? Were you able to? I don't think I did.
I remember right before we launched, just seeing it was very dark. Mm-hmm. But I don't think we could really see anything except darkness.
Yeah, I don't think we really could see anything except, and it wasn't until we got into space that we made our first orbit around it, where the sun was, you know, rising from the other side of the Earth, that we actually got our first light from the sun enter the capsule.
Yeah. Yes, and I remember saying out loud, "Is that the Earth?" And like, obviously, what else would it have been? But it was just so unbelievable. I had to say it out loud.
Yeah, interesting comment about first light. We'll be launching about an hour before sunrise at Cocoa Beach, Kennedy Space Center. But as they head into orbit, I wonder how long it'll take before we get sunlight into the capsules. They're heading northeast towards the sunrise.
Yeah, the crew is certainly prepared for some pretty amazing views on ascent. You know, we just heard from the Inspiration 4 crew about some of their experience with their launch. I absolutely love hearing them describe just how smooth the ride is. You know, that's always so surprising to me. We have 9 M1Ds, 1.7 million pounds of thrust, but yet somehow the ride is still smooth. That's just amazing.
I was actually just looking back at my Inspiration 4 liftoff notes in my handy-dandy notebook, and Sarah, who is our mission specialist on the far right-hand side of your screen there, was actually the core for liftoff of Inspiration 4. So I'm sure she's having a great 360 moment. Now, as we approach the last few minutes before liftoff, we have some well wishes for the crew.
Anna, Sarah, Kid, Jared. From the Dragonflight software team.
On behalf of the Dragon Propulsion Build team, Dragon Avionics here.
The materials team.
For the Build Reliability team.
The Draco team.
The Dragon Propulsion Engineering team. Falcon Flight Reliability.
From the Falcon Build Reliability Engineering team to Polaris Dawn.
We're so excited for you on the Polaris Dawn mission. We're wishing you the best of luck from McGregor.
Thanks for allowing us the opportunity to do a lot of testing.
Thank you, the Flying Dragon.
Please remember to keep your hands, arms, legs, and feet inside the vehicle at all times.
May Falcon and Dragon propel you to unimaginable heights.
We know our engines will get you there safe.
Go fly higher than Dragon's ever flown before.
And hope you enjoy your internet in space.
Good luck.
Safe travels and go Polaris Dawn.
Go Polaris Dawn. Godspeed, Polaris Dawn. Go Polaris Dawn.
We're waiting to hear Core talking to the crew, configure crew displays, and give them the farewell message.
Enjoy the journey and go safely.
To our SpaceX family, thank you. Today is all of our mission. You are launching with us.
Standing in our favor, please, to journey to the stage. This is the dawn of a new future in space.
Coming up on T-minus 9 minutes and counting. Displays are configured for launch. We've heard from the crew. Core is giving them the ready to launch message. Now coming up here, as we launch, you're going to hear some call outs, possibly stage 1A or mode 1 alpha. These are abort modes that just let the crew know as we're flying what they should be prepared for in case they had to execute an emergency escape from the Falcon 9. Don't expect that, but they are trained, and that's when you hear 1A, that means they've lifted off. 1B, you might hear, that'll come late in the ascent as we're throttling down the Merlins on the first stage. And then when we're on second stage, you'll hear 2A and eventually Shannon, which is a call out for Ireland that tells the crew that they can cross the North Atlantic. And then finally we get into orbit and everything gets disabled and Dragon will separate. But right now, coming up on T-minus 8 minutes, everything continues to go well.
At T-minus 7 seconds, we should hear the call out that stage 1 engine chill has started. At this point in time, when we hear that, we'll know that we're beginning to flow a little bit of the super chilled liquid oxygen through the first stage engines. This helps to basically pre-chill the engine hardware prior to the full flow of that super chilled liquid oxygen. This helps the ignition sequence and helps to avoid any thermal shock to the hardware. At this point in time, Falcon continuing to undergo its propellant loading operations. And standing by for the call out for that engine chill initiation.
Engine chill has started.
And great news there. As Kate mentioned, engine chill has begun. And we are loading propellants on Falcon 9's first and second stage. Second stage propellant loading for RP1 has completed. We're getting close to wrapping up propellant loading on stage 1. And while RP1 will be completed around the T-minus 6 minute mark, liquid oxygen loading will continue on both first and second stage as we get closer to the T0. So we should hear a call
Stage 1 RP1 load is complete.
Perfect timing. Stage 1 RP1, or the fuel for the Falcon 9 vehicle, has completed on the first stage.
Now coming up next at around T-minus 5 minutes, we should hear a call out that Dragon has transitioned to configure for terminal count. This is similar to the startup phase of the count for Falcon. It's essentially when the vehicle takes over control of the count and starts to operate on internal power and on internal computers. So of course, Falcon 9 enters the startup phase at T-minus 1 minute. And Dragon will transition to configure for terminal count at T-minus 5 minutes. Got a great view right now of both Dragon on the left side of your screen and our 4 crew members on the right. We are now approaching the final minutes of the countdown here.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
Dragon isn't configured for terminal count.
So we've heard the call out, Dragon's configured for the last 5 minutes of the count. We're also pressurizing the second stage propellant tanks, first stage tanks. The strong back retract will be coming up next.
Strong back is retracting.
All right, so there's that call out. We should begin to see it retract slightly from Falcon 9. LOX load continues on both first and second stage. Fuel loading is complete on first and second stage. We expect the LOX load to complete on first stage at T-minus 3 minutes and complete on second stage around T-minus 2 minutes.
Yeah, we do try and load the liquid oxygen as close to T0 as possible. This keeps the liquid oxygen is at cryo temperature, so keeps it as cold as possible, which allows it to be as dense as we possibly can keep it while we're loading the tanks. That allows us to get a little bit more liquid oxygen into those tanks. And as Kate mentioned, at T-minus 3 minutes, we should see stage 1 liquid oxygen loading completing, and at T-minus 2 minutes, that will be stage 2 liquid oxygen loading completion. And once we hit that T-minus 2 minute mark, that will conclude propellant loading for Falcon 9. We are coming up here just about 10 seconds or so for that call out of stage 1 liquid oxygen loading.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
Okay, there's the call out.
Dragon is in terminal count and on internal power.
Dragon's on internal power. First stage, propellant tanks are loaded. Next major event, approximately T-minus 2 minutes, liquid oxygen load completes on the second stage. After that, at about T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds or so, we will tell the crew to expect loud venting as we depressurize and drain the lines up the side of the strong back. And then as we get down inside the last minute 45 and then 1 minute, we'll get Dragon into countdown. Falcon 9 computers will go to startup. Waiting for the call out now for liquid oxygen.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And there we go, LOX loading complete on second stage. All major propellant activities are complete. Dragon
is in auto idle.
Dragon's gone to auto idle, one of the states in its flight computer. We'll begin venting down the lines.
Gas closeouts are starting. Expect loud venting.
There we go. So the plume you see coming off of the strong back here, that's normal. As we come up on T-minus 1 minute, we'll hear Dragon computers in the countdown, Falcon 9 computers in the countdown, flight termination system armed, and then we'll hear the goes. So let's listen in to the last 66 seconds of the countdown.
FTS is armed, Falcon 9 is in startup and is now controlling.
Dragon is in countdown.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
Send us, SpaceX.
T-minus 30 seconds. T minus 15. T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and go Falcon, go Polaris.
Copy, 1 Alpha.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
T plus 35 seconds into the Polaris Dawn mission, flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9 to new heights.
Power and telemetry nominal.
And we're throttling down in preparation for max Q. Next call out, the vehicle supersonic. And there on the left side, we've got the Polaris Dawn crew.
Supersonic.
Thumbs up from the pilot on the left side there.
Max Q.
We're throttled back up to power.
1 Bravo.
And we heard the call out 1 Bravo.
Copy, 1 Bravo.
That just tells the crew what would happen should they need to initiate anything. But right now, everybody making nominal callouts on Falcon 9. Nice views from the ground camera and nice view from inside Dragon.
MVAC chill is underway.
The announcement lets us know we've begun the final chill of the second stage engine in preparation for its activity coming up at about T plus 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Two minutes into flight. Everything continues to look good. We'll have in half a minute 3 major activities. Shutdown of the 9 Merlin 1D engines. Stage separation.
1 throttle down.
And then ignition of the second stage engine. Throttle down. We're holding a constant acceleration now for the crew just below 4 Gs. See, we're coming up 70 kilometers. Preparing for MECO.
Main engine cut off.
2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed.
Copy, 2 Alpha.
MVAC ignition.
As you can tell by the cheers behind us and the views on your screen, the first stage booster now on its way to attempt landing on Just Read the Instructions. Second stage there on the right-hand side of your screen. You can see that the first stage has not yet reached its apogee. You can see the altitude there. Lots of thumbs up there from, from pilot Scott Kid Poteet. Now 3.5 minutes into the Polaris Dawn mission. First stage continuing to make its way up to its apogee. We'll see that altitude begin to slow down.
Dragon SpaceX trajectory nominal.
Great news there, indicating
Dragon copy.
that the second stage trajectory is looking good. Now the grid fins have deployed on the first stage. If we get first stage views, we might be able to see the Florida coast in the background. Oh, they're right there. Yeah, we sure can. Once again, our drone ship is attempting to land on, our booster is attempting to land on our drone ship. Just read the instructions. Now, the next event coming up will be the entry burn, taking place around T plus 7.5 minutes. This burn will utilize 3 of the engines on the first stage. That helps to slow the booster down as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere.
Dragon SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Dragon copies.
Following the entry burn, we will see the landing burn, and that'll be around T plus 9 minutes. That one will be just a single engine burn, and that will bring the booster down for a soft landing on our drone ship. Around the same time as that, we expect to see Dragon be injected into orbit. Everything continuing to look good for second stage there on the right-hand side of your screen. Beautiful glow with that MVAC engine nozzle. We can see the crew settling
Dragon
quite...
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Dragon copies.
Crew seems pretty comfortable there at T plus 6 minutes. They're at about 4 Gs, and everything looks good. First stage continuing its descent back down to planet Earth. We can see the crew remain with their visors down in the locked position. That'll remain that way until they are in orbit. Everything continuing to look great with the second stage engine burn there, as well as the...
Dragon SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Dragon copies.
We're about 30 seconds away from the first stage entry burn. This is the first of 2 burns that the first stage will perform. Designed to help reduce the amount of drag experienced by the first stage.
Stage 2 FTSS saved.
All right, standing by for entry burn begin on the first stage, there on the left-hand side of your screen.
And right on time, you can see on your left-hand screen that the entry burn has begun. There's 3 engines lit on that first stage vehicle. And this is about a 29-second burn and helps slow the vehicle down as it's re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. There you can see that the engines have now shut down on that first stage. That concludes the entry burn. And the cool part about this, with the stage 1 vehicle returning back to Earth, is we get to fully utilize the atmosphere. The atmosphere actually...
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
The atmosphere actually scrubs about 70% of the velocity on the vehicle. So we use that entry burn to help slow the vehicle down. Then we utilize the atmosphere and the drag from the atmosphere to slow the vehicle down. And then we do have 1 single burn for the landing burn.
Copy. Shannon.
And next up will be SECO 1. And that is second stage engine cutoff 1, and that'll be on the second stage. That MVAC engine on your right-hand screen will shut down and allow the vehicle with Dragon attached to coast.
MVAC shut down.
And there's that shutdown. And the landing burn on the first stage should be starting up here momentarily. And there it is. Landing burn has begun for...
Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
Dragon SpaceX, launch escape system disarmed.
Copy that, SpaceX, and we show the scene.
And a lot of events happening right there, but you can see that the stage 1 vehicle has touched down. Just read the instructions. A very exciting here in Hawthorne. We've also confirmed MVAC engine shutdown and orbital insertion of the second stage with the crew on board.
Yeah, honestly, a pretty impressive crowd for 2:30 in the morning here. We can see the crew enjoying their first taste of microgravity there on the left-hand side of your screen. Now that the MVAC engine has shut down, they are able to just kind of float free. We might catch a glimpse of the zero-G indicator. I can't quite tell if they've... Oh, it looks like it's in the upper right-hand corner. It'll come back into view here. Once again, they will keep their visors on until given the okay by core here on the ground. At this point in time, the Dragon and the Dragon trunk remain attached to the second stage. Second stage is basically safing itself in preparation for the separation from the Dragon trunk. Of course, the trunk will remain attached to the Dragon capsule all the way up until the point in which we begin re-entry operations. The trunk is what will help provide power to the Dragon capsule while it is on orbit using its solar arrays. Looks like our first clear view of planet Earth there, our first of many for this mission. And the next event coming up will be the separation of the Dragon from the second stage. I believe this view here is, yep, it's of the trunk. We can see it separating from the second stage. A gorgeous view. We can see that Polaris Dawn.
Dragon separation confirmed.
And copy that, SpaceX, we show the same.
Polaris Dawn flying free into the sunrise. We're now at T plus 13 minutes and 5 seconds into the mission. Next major event will be nose cone deploy.
Dragon, SpaceX. Today you embark on a journey not just for yourselves, but for all of humanity. Each of you has trained tirelessly and prepared rigorously for this moment. The moment where we reach higher into space than ever before. As you gaze towards the North Star, remember that your courage lights the path for future explorers. We trust in your skills, your bravery, and your teamwork to carry out the mission that lies ahead. Know that the entire team back here is with you every step, watching, supporting, and cheering you on as you walk into space. We are sending you hugs from the ground. Godspeed, Polaris Dawn crew. May you make history and come home safely. Now words from our CE.
Dragon, CE, welcome to orbit. The Falcon team is honored to have helped you start your incredible journey. We hope you enjoyed the ride. The whole SpaceX family is looking up to you. Godspeed and good luck.
LD, CE, message received. We appreciate the kind words. We wouldn't be on this journey without all 14,000 of you back at SpaceX and everyone else cheering us on. We appreciate it, and we're going to get to work now.
Some really nice words there from our tonight's launch director, Frank Messina, who, fun fact, was also the launch director on Inspiration 4, as well as chief engineer for this mission, Jared Metter. really nice to see some endearing, or hear some endearing words up to the crew.
Well, and with that, the Polaris Dawn crew, they're now in orbit. T plus 15 minutes, and they are scheduled to spend up to the next 5 days in space. We heard that tone for a minute. We thought we might hear from the crew, but they're going to spend the next 5 days in space before splashing down off the coast of Florida.
The Polaris Dawn crew is the Polaris Dawn mission is the first mission in the Polaris program that will demonstrate new technologies, conduct extensive research, and ultimately culminate in a flight of SpaceX's Starship with humans on board. All of this while continuing to raise funds and awareness for important causes here on Earth. You can learn more about the Polaris Dawn program and the Polaris program at polarisprogram.com.
This mission will fly higher than any Dragon mission to date, attempting to reach the highest Earth orbit ever flown for a crewed spacecraft, breaking the record set by Gemini 11 half a century ago. And there it looks like we can see some nose cone separation action happening. Now, the Polaris Dawn crew will also be the first to test the Starlink laser-based communications in space.
Over the course of the mission, we'll be checking in periodically with the crew. Next up, Dragon will initiate a 2-day pre-breathe process to prepare the crew for their upcoming spacewalk, and that'll be this Thursday, September 12th.
Dragon SpaceX nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts, and nose cone open is in progress.
Copy that, SpaceX. We are tracking.
And again, that's Thursday, September 12th for that spacewalk, so please be sure to tune in for our live coverage of this historic milestone.
And of course, we will also be back to bring you live coverage of Splashdown when the crew returns back to Earth. You can stay on top of any potential live events from the crew by following us on X at SpaceX.
And keep tabs on the mission with the Dragon Tracker at SpaceX.com. With that, it's been a great early morning. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here soon.